Hi, I'm Diane Cometa, and today on Dishin with Di, I'm going to show you step by step how to make French macaroons. A little crisp on the outside, a little chewy on the inside, and beautiful. So let's get started on Dishin with Di. There's only a few ingredients in this recipe, and the first thing I have here is some almond meal or almond flour. Now, I purchased this already ground, but if you can't find it, then you can go ahead and get yourself some blanched almonds and you can process them in your food processor or your blender until they're very fine. But I would suggest that you sift them a few times to make sure there's no gritty pieces in there. So even though I purchased this already ground, I did run it through the strainer first, and I did find that there was some little gritty pieces. It tends to be kind of clumped together in the bag, so you want to kind of get that out and loosen it up a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is sift it again, and I'm putting it into this bowl right here. And I'm going to combine that with some confectioner sugar, which is also called icing sugar or powdered sugar. I just have a little strainer here, and I'm just going to run them through and make sure that there are no lumps and this is thoroughly mixed through. And there's still a few little lumps in here. They will show up on the surface of your cookies. So you just want to ditch that and move on. So that's combined, and now I'm going to whisk it again to make sure it's really nice and aerated and mixed through. And the next thing I have is some white granulated sugar here. This is just regular table sugar, you would know it as. And then I have a little bit of salt, and I have egg whites. What we're going to do first is into the bowl of a stand mixer or using a hand mixer. You could do this by hand if you want to too, but you're going to be there for a little bit. So we are going to take room temperature egg whites, and I have a clean bowl and a whisk attachment. If they're not warm at room temperature, then they're not going to beat up, and that's what we're going to do here. We're going to take this little bit of salt, and this is fine salt, and we're going to put that in with the egg whites, and we're going to turn this on high and beat this until it gets soft peaks. So now we've reached the soft peak stage, and you can see it's kind of foamy in there, and the little peak will just flop over. So I have the granulated sugar. I'm going to take that and I'm going to put some in. We're just going to do this a little bit at a time, and I like to turn the mixer off when I do this, because if the mixer's on, the sugar tends to kind of splash all against the sides and it's hard to get it off of there. So go ahead and put that in, and then turn your mixer on and get that mixed through. Then you're going to add a little bit more in. So you're just going to continue to do that until you get all of this sugar in there. Now all the sugar is in there. You want to turn your mixer up to high, and you're going to beat this until it forms stiff, glossy peaks. Okay, I think that we have reached firm, glossy peaks. And now you can mix through some gel food coloring if you want to make it a pretty color. It's not moving at all, and this is what you're looking for. So you want to make sure that you don't go too far with it, because then it could start to break apart a little bit. So now what we're going to do is fold in this dry mixture into the egg whites. So grab your strainer, and you're going to take about half of the dry mixture, and you're just going to sift this in so that it goes in nice and light to the egg whites. Now folding is done with a large spatula in this case, and this is a rubber spatula, and what you're going to do is just take the mixture and kind of fold it over itself. So go from the sides and the bottom and just lift it up and pull it over. You can even cut in like this and pull it over. So you can see it's going to look kind of like a sloppy mess. So as soon as this starts to come together and it doesn't look like there's a lot of dry mixture in there, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to sift the rest of that dry mixture into this. So that looks like we kind of got everything coated there, and I'm going to go ahead and sift in the rest. So what you're looking for is this mixture to look smooth. So you don't want it to be runny, you want it to be smooth, sort of like honey or lava, the way that flows. And At this point, if you were to, stop mixing and you try to make your macaroons with it, you see how it's kind of lumpy and choppy looking, okay? The macarons would come out and they would be cracked and just an absolute mess. If you let it mix too much, then they're going to spread out too much on your baking sheet, and then that's going to be a fail as well. So it's kind of a delicate balance here. So I've tried counting, but sometimes maybe I do a half a turn, sometimes I do a full turn. You just have to really kind of look at it. So it's starting to come together nicely now. Be sure to scrape the batter off of the spatula once in a while because it does accumulate on there. So here is what you're looking for. The batter should flow from your spatula when you hold it up, just like that, and sit in the batter for a minute before it disappears. So you see how it flows nicely, kind of pauses, and then it flows in. That's what you're looking for. So now I have a piping bag here and I have a 1/2 inch tip on the end. If you don't have a piping bag, you can use a disposable plastic bag and you can snip the end off. But I can tell you, I've made these with and without the tip, and they just come out a little bit nicer and cleaner looking if you have a tip. So put this into our piping bag carefully. I have some baking sheets here that I've lined with parchment paper, and to prevent them from moving, I'm just going to put a little bit of batter onto my finger, and I'm just going to go up in the corners because you can see how this slides around, and you really need to use the parchment paper or these cookies are going to stick. After you get all the batter in the bag, then you just want to twist the top, hold it to the side because otherwise it's going to ooze out. Go onto your sheet and go ahead and pipe about 1-inch rounds, and then just pull it up quickly and leave about 1 inch to 2 inches in between each one, and then pull it up. It'll have a little peak on it, but that should settle down. Now that all the cookies are on the sheet, what you want to do is tap it down firmly on your counter to release any air bubbles. I usually do it about 6 times. So what's happening now is they flattened out nicely, but you can see where some of the air bubbles have come to the surface. So have a little toothpick handy, and if there's something that has like a little hole, just go ahead and fix that with your toothpick. Now if there are any peaks on the macaroons, then you want to moisten your finger just lightly and then go ahead and smooth that out. You want to make sure you do this right after you've piped them out because they start to set, like dry on the top very quickly. So if you wait a few minutes and you come back to it, they might be set, and then when you try to fix it, it's going to leave little divots in the top of the cookie that won't go away when it's resting and then when it's baking. So now you're going to let your baking sheet sit out on your counter at room temperature for 1 hour. And this is a very, very crucial part of this recipe. These need to dry on the surface, and they're going to feel almost like the outside of an eggshell, and that's going to help them to develop when they're baking what's called feet, which is a ruffled edge at the bottom of the cookie and one of the signs of a successful French macaron. My cookies have rested for 1 hour and they're nice and dry and smooth, but we're not in the clear yet. The baking. Now what you want to do 30 minutes into your rest period is turn your oven on to 300 degrees and position the rack in the center. Now you want to give your oven that 30 minutes to heat up. Since these are so finicky, we want to make sure that the walls of the oven get nice and hot, and that takes a good 30 minutes. So another tip here would be to make sure that your oven is running on temperature. You can get a thermometer and put that in there and see if it's running a little hot or a little cold and try to adjust it. And then you're going to take your baking sheets one at a time and bake them for about 15 minutes. And you'll know it's done when you go to lift it up and it just lifts away, and it might stick just very slightly and then it comes off. If it sticks to the bottom of the parchment paper and the top just comes off, it's not done. It needs a couple more minutes. So when it's done, you want to take it and put it on a rack and let it cool for about 2 minutes, and then you can go ahead and take the cookies off and put them onto a cooling rack. I like to just sweep the whole piece of parchment paper off of the baking sheet and put it right onto the cooling rack. It just makes everything a lot easier. Then you let them cool completely. Now, don't go ahead and put your other baking sheet right into the oven when you pull the first one out. Let the oven heat back up again for another 5 minutes and then put that other baking sheet in. In the end, you're going to be happy with the results. So get them into the oven and then you're ready to put a filling in. I have some chocolate ganache here that I made earlier, and usually I'll go ahead and pipe this on. And if you were piping it, what you would want to do is just leave some room around the edge. I also like to use my buttercream frosting. Raspberry tastes absolutely delicious on these. So just put a little bit on and then sandwich it with another cookie, and they look absolutely adorable. These have developed really beautiful feet, as they say, and they're just like the perfect bite-sized little dessert. So here we go. I just went to heaven and now I'm back. Really good. Nice and crisp on the top, very light, a little bit chewy inside, absolutely perfect. So step by step, follow my instructions, and you will be making these for your next holiday. The recipes can be found on my website, dishinwithdie.com. And I hope I made your life a little easier, more enjoyable, and delicious. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.